So my name's Jamara. I run an Instagram account called Cake Face Jam, and today we're going to make vanilla cupcakes or a cake. Basically, if you're going to use this recipe to make a cake, you just have to double it. I'll be making cupcakes today, so it'll be half the recipe, and I'm just using a 12 muffin tray case. So you can do the same. If you don't have a muffin tray case, it's fine. You can just put it on a baking tray with the cupcake cases just held out as well. But if you have one, it just retains the space of the cupcakes in the case. Okay, so what you need to bake this cupcake or cakes are margarine or butter. Doesn't really matter which one you use. So I've got soft spread here because I bake quite a lot. You can either use plain flour or self-raising flour. I know with lockdown at the minute, it's quite hard to get flour. So we'll make sure you can use either. And the way we make the cake rise will be through the baking powder, which I've also got. And then you also need caster sugar. If you haven't got caster sugar, that's okay. You can use granulated sugar. You'll just use less of it, but I'll explain that as we go along. And then you'll also need some eggs. If you want to make the cake a bit more moist, you can add a couple of tablespoons of milk. So when I get to that point in the recipe, I'll let you know when you can do that if you want. And then the final things that you'll need to actually make the cake are a wooden spoon if you want an arm workout, because that's how you're going to mix the batter. Or if you have a handheld whisk, you can use that. I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to use my handheld whisk. But you can use a spoon, a whisk, handheld whisk. Just depends how you want to do it. Make sure you've got some scales. If you don't have scales, what I recommend is you try and find a mug that you have at home, and you can measure the flour, the sugar, and the butter in a mug. They're all the same measurements, and then I'll tell you how many eggs you'll need to add. Okay, so we're going to start with adding the butter to the bowl first. So if you're doing the cupcakes, you need 150 grams of butter. If you're making a cake, again, it will be double, so it will be 300 grams. Okay, once you've got your butter measured out, you're going to add the same amount of sugar into the bowl as well. So again, for me, because I'm doing cupcakes, I'll be adding 150 grams of sugar. And if you're doing a cake, do double, so 300 grams. Okay, so once you've got the sugar and the margarine or butter in a bowl, this is the horrible bit. This is the workout part in making the cakes. If you're using a wooden spoon, you're going to spend about 8 minutes mixing this up. It is a massive workout on your arms as well. So you're going to spend the next 5 to 8 minutes mixing it up with a spoon. If you have got a whisk or a handheld whisk, it will be about 5 minutes. You're literally just going to start whisking the butter and sugar together. Something that they don't tell you in recipes is if you whisk it for at least 5 minutes, you can actually get a really light and fluffy cake. That's how a lot of the bakeries get something really light, because you've actually just incorporated air bubbles into it. Yeah, so it's 300 grams of sugar for the cake, if you're doing a cake. So when you first start out, it will look quite grainy. You just keep going until it gets really light and fluffy. So it will be a few minutes of a lot of whisking. So you can see the colour's already changing because the air bubbles are going through it quite well. If you want to make sure you're getting all the ingredients mixed up, use a spoon just to go around the sides as well and bring it back to the middle. So you can use a normal spoon, or if you've got a spatula at home, that just gets the sides better.
Mine's like a thick paste. Is that the right for now? Is it going to get a little lighter?
Sorry?
Mine's just like a thick paste. Is it going to go lighter?
Yeah, you've got to really mix it. This is your hustle part of the baking. Yeah, so keep going until you get it to that kind of lightness, so it looks almost kind of like it's whipped cream. If you are using a wooden spoon, it will take a while. It just takes a lot of whipping and mixing around. If you are using a spoon or a whisk, you don't have to do this bit as much, but because I'm using an electric hand whisk, it kind of goes all over the bowl, so that's why I'm just bringing it back in the middle.
Can I just have a look at how it's meant to be looking?
Yeah. So like quite light and fluffy.
Yeah, okay. Mine's just all getting stuck in the whisk bit. Is that...
I'd get a wooden spoon then.
Go. All right.
So I'll show you what it looks like with a wooden spoon. So with a wooden spoon, you're literally just doing this motion for ages. So when I do it, I try and move really quickly to incorporate the air. So that mixing process with the butter and sugar is called beating it, and it's all about getting the speed and whipping it. So it should start looking like that. How are both of yours looking?
Yeah, getting like that, I think.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
This is what I said, baking isn't as easy as it looks. Maybe this is why I have like a lot of upper arm strength.
Yeah.
How's it looking?
Well, it's still pretty thick. It's like this.
Okay, did your butter just come out the fridge?
Yeah, because I didn't have enough already out.
That's okay. So yours is going to take a lot more whipping because it's just come out the fridge.
Okay.
But something you can do to make the process a bit quicker is, do you have a microwave?
Yeah.
Literally stick it in for maybe 10 seconds, if that.
Okay. All right. I'll do that now.
I'll soften it a bit.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
That's okay. The next bit is the easiest bit, I promise. This is just the only bit that's a bit difficult. Yeah, that looks good. How are you getting on now, Johnny?
Yeah, it's much. It's much. I think it's getting there now. I'm just gonna keep whisking it for a sec.
Yeah, do it.
Okay.
If you haven't got an electric whisk, this is probably the longest bit in the process. But things that do make it quicker is if you do leave the butter out for at least an hour out of the fridge. It's the same with eggs. So eggs work best if they're at room temperature. Again, if you haven't done that ahead of time, or you just bought the ingredients from the shop, the way to heat up butter is either put it in some hot water in its packet for about a minute, or you can just put it in the microwave for 10 seconds just to make it soft. But you've got to make sure it's not melting, otherwise it won't develop in the mix. Oh, amazing. Okay, that looks really good. Yeah, they look really good. Okay, so the next thing to do is just bring back the mixture to the middle. So whether you're using a spoon or a spatula, just take it off the sides of the bowl, just so you've got it back to the center as much as you can. And then this bit's super easy. So the rest of our ingredients are going to go in. Once they've gone in, it's really important that we don't overmix. Something that people don't realize is if you overmix the batter, all the air bubbles that you've just put in through the whipping disappear. So if you're doing cupcakes, you're going to crack 2 eggs in. If you're making the cake, you're going to crack double, so 4. So put in 2 eggs or 4. And then put in the flour. So I've got self-raising flour, but if you've got plain flour, that's okay as well. If you're using it for cupcakes, you're going to put in 150 grams, so the same as the butter and sugar. If you're making a cake, then you'll put in 300 grams. So I'm quite a lazy baker. So when you watch other tutorials or when you see other recipes, you'll see that they encourage you to sift your flour. I haven't really found much difference. So see how you feel once you've baked these and see if you would want to sift them next time, but I don't normally do that. If you've used self-raising flour, still put in 1 teaspoon of baking powder. If you're using plain flour, put in 1.5 teaspoons. This is where you will also add milk if you want to make it a bit more moist or a bit of a softer sponge, which I like. So if you want to make it a bit softer, put in 2 tablespoons of milk. The way I measure that out is I just use the cap. So just pour 2 caps worth if you want. I just keep it quicker. And at this point, if you have any vanilla extract or vanilla flavouring, you can put it in now. If you want to keep it plain, you can. You can also add chocolate chips. You can add dried fruits in it. You can add anything at this point if you want. If you want to turn it into a chocolate cupcake recipe, substitute 20 grams of the flour and add 20 grams of cocoa powder. Otherwise, this is where you do the final mixing. You're probably going to mix this for a minute at most if you're doing it by hand. And if you're doing it with an electric mix, it will probably be 30 seconds. So on a really low speed, I'm just going round the bowl until it just incorporates. That's literally it. So you don't need to overmix it. Try and be gentle with it when you mix it, just because you want to keep the air bubbles in it. One of the ways to mix it without beating out the air is just folding. So you literally get your spoon and you just fold it over into the batter. So it's just gently incorporating all those ingredients.
Sorry, I'm just slightly behind because I had to grab a charger. I've just put the flour in. So how much baking powder and milk was it, sorry?
Have you got plain flour?
Yes.
Red one, isn't it? Yeah. So you put in 275 grams of plain flour. So if you put in 2 teaspoons of baking powder.
Okay. A few, did you say?
2 teaspoons.
Oh, 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you put the flour, you put the eggs in.
Yeah, 4 eggs, yeah.
So now you can put in 3 tablespoons or just a capful of milk if you want. That just makes it a bit softer and moist.
Super, thank you.
I literally just use that and pour it in. So just 3 of those. Johnny, have you got your oven on as well?
I was literally just about to ask that. What should I preheat? I'm not going to eat. What should I preheat?
Put your oven on 160.
Okay.
Oh, actually, you're making a cake, so if you put yours to 180.
Yeah. Yeah, done.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so once you've put in your milk, your eggs, your flour, and your baking powder, if you're using a wooden spoon, you just need to lightly fold it. So don't beat like you did with the butter and sugar. You're literally just folding the batter into itself until you've incorporated the ingredients. Something that recipes don't really tell you in this instance is a lot of people over whip it because that's what they did with the butter and sugar. And what that does is it makes really dense cupcakes. So if you want the really soft, airy cupcake, you've got to retain any air bubbles that you can. So once you've got to this bit, this is where you now either fill your cupcake cases or you fill your cake tins. And again, if you're using a cake tin, make sure you've lightly greased it just so it doesn't get stuck after you try and remove it. If you are using cupcake cases like I am, so just get a teaspoon and you're literally just going to put a heaped teaspoon into each case for now, and then go over them afterwards if you've got any leftover batter.
If we're using these, do we need to grease the thing or not?
No, no, you're fine.
So just put 1 teaspoon in each one.
Yeah, so I'm putting quite a heaped teaspoon, but you're going to go back through them again anyway.
Okay.
So that teaspoon just drops that in.
How many will this make?
So I usually make about 12.
Okay.
I've got that much left, so I'm just going to go over them again and just give them a bit more batter.
I just wanted to check, is that looking all right to go into the trays yet, do you think?
Yeah, give it a mix, you can see what it looks like.
Sorry?
Just give it a quick stir so I can see what the consistency's like.
Oh, hang on, let me just rinse my thing. Just give me a sec.
That's all right, you can use a teaspoon or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks really good. So
Thank you.
now just split between the 2 tins.
Yeah, cool. All right, thanks.
That's what I've got in my.
That looks good.
Oh.
Have you used all your batter up?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So the other thing with baking cupcakes, I always find that people try and fill their cases too much. So when they then rise in the oven, they just go all over the place. So a good rule of thumb is don't fill it any more than 2/3. Otherwise, yeah, you'll have it spilling out of the cases. It's the same with your cake tin. Filling it halfway is best, because then you know that it's got space to rise and it'll be more lighter that way. If you fill it over halfway, over 2/3, you're more likely to have it spill out of the tin. So yeah, mine's the same. They're not completely full to the top because there's a lot of air bubbles in them, so they'll rise in the oven. And then once you've filled your cases or your cake tins, put them in the oven. For cupcakes, you want to make sure your oven's been preheated at 160, and they'll go in for 12 to 15 minutes. Making a cake, your oven been on 80, and you'll put it in for about 20 minutes. I'm just going to put mine in. So one of the ways to know if your cake is done, so if you're baking cupcakes or a cake, it's really important that you don't open the oven until at least 3/4 of the way of it baking. So the reason why you shouldn't open it before, so with cupcakes, I would never open mine before 10 minutes, is because if any air goes in, any cold air goes in, it could knock the sponge and it will sink. And that's one of the common things people realise that they do without knowing what it does to the cupcakes. To know how they've baked, with cupcakes, if you just press your finger in the middle of one of them, if it springs back, you know it's done. Or the other thing that I do is just use a toothpick and just go through the middle, and if it comes out clean, it's cooked. The other thing you can do is just check that it's light brown, and it's the same with a cake. Cakes do take longer, so make sure that if you're cooking the cake for 20 minutes, you don't peek or open the oven until 16, 17 minutes in, and then you can see if it's cooked. All right, Bobby, have you got yours in the oven?
Yeah, all in the oven.
How are you doing, Johnny?
In the oven.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so yeah, make sure.
Did you say 15? 1.5 for the cake? Did you say 15 minutes?
No, yours will take 20 minutes.
20.
But don't
Okay,
open the door until 16, 17 minutes in to check
cool.
those.
Yeah.
The other thing, once they've come out of the oven, make sure in your cupcake cases, you leave them in the tray for 5 minutes to cool. And make sure when you leave them in the cake tins, you leave them in for 10 minutes just to cool as well. And then once they've cooled down, you can take them out. With the cake, make sure you just get a clean butter knife and you just go around the edge of it just to kind of release it out of the cake tin. Do you have any ideas what you want to do for toppings or anything?
I was going to put strawberries on mine.
Nice.
So what do I do after they're cooked? Just slice them and put them on?
Yeah, once they've cooked, give them 10-15 minutes to cool down. If you are putting buttercream on it, so it's the same kind of process that you did with the butter and sugar, use butter and icing sugar. Use double the amount of icing sugar to butter. And if you are using buttercream, make sure the cakes are cooled completely. Otherwise, the icing will just melt or seep through. If you are putting fresh ingredients on, like strawberries, you can put that on straight away. The other thing you can do with these cupcakes is you can just cut a hole in the middle. You can do that with a knife or a spoon, and then you can spoon some jam into it. And then you can put the buttercream on top, so it creates a Victoria sponge cupcake. If you are creating a cake, you should only need 100 grams worth of butter and 200 grams worth of icing sugar. Whip that up really light and fluffy, like you did with the butter and sugar. Put that on, and then put some jam on. You've got a Victoria sponge. Something that I'm going to do with my cupcakes today, because we've got loads of Easter egg chocolate left, I'm going to melt my chocolate in the microwave, and then I'm going to drizzle it on top. So mine won't have buttercream this time, it will just have a chocolate sauce on. So that's another thing you can do.